Hello, everyone. I wanted to thank everyone for attending this session. My name is Ray Nault. I'm from our Education Assistance Group. This is the Ask the Expert, and I want to thank those of you who did submit questions to us. I've unmuted the phones for everybody with the understanding that this is really going to be kind of an open dialogue between all of us. Any questions you have, feel free to ask away. I do have a basic handout that's going to just help us review some of the questions that was sent to us. The questions can be anything regarding compliance, systems, process procedure, customer service, because those are some of the questions that we did get for today's session. Those that we not be able to answer during the session, will certainly feel free and ask us after the session, or we'll get back to you because we're going to run out of time. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Ray Nault, I'm from HEG. My co-presenter here is Russ Romandini. He's my senior systems analyst and financially consultant with HEG as well. We do work with a variety of colleges and communities around the country here, so hopefully some of the experiences we've had will help you with some of the concerns or issues or items that you would like to cover. So if you do have questions throughout this, don't hesitate to either you can send a question through the chat feature or ask away. Everyone's phone is unmuted. We are going to record this session and send you the URL in case you would like to refer to it or send it off to any colleagues that would like to see it as well. So we'll start off with some of the first questions here. And again, that doesn't have to be specific to Banner. If you're PowerOfAIDS, DataTel, PeopleSoft, you can certainly feel free and ask away. We may not have the answers right away, but we'll get them to you as soon as possible. The first question I got is it possible to display the awards in a certain order in self-service Banner, i.e., scholarships first and grants and so forth? And so, if so, how would you set this up? The answer to this is typically on RFR base, on that right-hand column, the print order will certainly help determine the order in which those items print. In any cases, though, the self-service Banner uses the alpha breakdown in order to display the information. So I've worked with some colleges that have reorganized their fund codes in such a way where they will use numeric values in front of a fund code so that way it will show up first versus alpha, and used a sequencing, so to speak. That way it ensures that when they look on self-service, then we'll see the order in which you want to have it displayed. It is a pain to have it reordered that way because if you have existing fund codes, you can't delete them. But that is one of the easiest ways to do it. Nothing currently in self-service Banner to have it ordered the right way without changing the naming convention. That answers the question, but that's one of the ways I work with schools as this renaming and having a naming convention so that way scholarships all end up first or second and so forth. So the second question we got was that this person attended the New Year Roll webinar and provided over the past several months the person setting up the online award letter for their college and was curious about how to put this together, documentation, and set up for this particular issue. During Banner 7, they implemented the online award letter, which gives you tons of different features that you can see on the form as ROAINST, R-O-A-I-N-S-T. And you can deliver a variety of different information using web text. You can use terms and conditions. Total for authorizations can be collected online. So it depends on how detailed you want your award feature to be for students to complete that information. I actually just helped the college right before this session deliver 2,200 awards, and they collect everything online where the students accept their loans and work study online. They answer Title IV questions online, as well as they review the terms and conditions that they are associated with their award. They're also displaying a variety of messages to the students using web text decided to deliver the federal shopping sheet electronically as well. And I can say the implementation of that was fairly simple. You obviously want to get it right, and there's a great handbook on the shopping sheet component of it. But for the basic award letter, the vanilla version out of Banner, there's no real setup other than turning it on. So on RoboInch, there's that box that turns on the aid year. On the web processing tab, that turns on the aid year so students can see their outstanding requirements or their reward. And then on the award screen, on the packaging group tab, there's the award information access indicator. Once you enable that, students can go online and interact with you. They can see their award and so forth. The type of information that person wants to display will determine how interactive you want it to be. So on the web processing rule tab that you see on the institutional form, you determine what wants to be added, determine what kind of setup will need to go into that. As if you want students to and additional request set up authorizations to the resource and additional questions tab. It allows students to submit scholarship information to you, i.e. Mexicola, Miss Rotary Club, Pepsi Cola, so forth. They can submit outside scholarship information to you. But you also can collect and settle for authorizations or even a FERPA release that many schools are really moving to. Instead of having that collected in the registrar's office, the financial aid office is also collecting who they can release the information to. And if the student hasn't answered that question, the person who's calling doesn't get any information released to them. So when looking at the award letter piece, out of the box, very limited setup. Depending on how specific you want to get, will determine what are the next steps you would want to set up. So I don't know if that person is on this session right now, but hopefully that answered the question. If not, feel free. I can, I don't know how much more detail you want me to get, but there's a variety of different things that can be done for the award letter component. I'm getting some comments about the speaker. Can you guys refund? Is there feedback? Because I'm on a headset. I can take myself off the headset. Is that better? All right. So hopefully that's better. But what I just went over with that, hopefully that answers the question for the person who had that question. Now, the next question that we have is what are the best HR student employee software systems to integrate within Banner? Does anyone use Kronos or is it outdated? Well, first of all, let me ask, does anyone use Kronos besides this institution?
No, ma'am.
Sounds like a no.
Huh?
Do the schools use Kronos?
No, it's whoever knows.
Okay. Well, what we have, there are a few out there that are used.
Banner? I'm thinking this is not going to help.
Position? Okay. There are a few that I know integrate with Banner. I've worked with a bunch of schools that use ADP, and this school doesn't have Banner HR, but they have position control.
All right, I'm good.
Manage it. There are a few schools that I do work with that don't have Banner HR or payroll and use payroll to do the payroll processing of it. They have workflow. I work with a bunch of schools who've used workflow to automate the entire work study process from the point of hiring to updating the student authorization form to updating or sending that information over to payroll HR to collect that information. So depending on what kind of other modules you may have, could really dictate how well you could automate the HR student employee process. But I do know ADP does work fairly well with that, and it's relatively inexpensive for a small shop. So that answers your question in terms of the employee software. Are you looking more in terms of payroll or really the authorization process? And really that the authorization process, that can all be done on Banner because you have the financial aid component of it. But if it's a payroll portion of it without the module, you'll need something else. But you do need to get IT support because either way, these schools need to develop a bridge between the two databases unless someone's going to manually update that information for you. So the next question I have is more really policy, compliance related. What is really expected of schools with regard to documentation for I-9s, R2T4s, PJs, and plus loan borrower information? Well, the litany of things, and you bring up I-9s, you're not only dealing with the Department of Education, but you're also dealing with the Department of Labor and IRS. And there are different legislative requirements that we have. So in terms of financial aid regulations, we are required to keep that information for 4 years from the most completed FISAP. And once after that time has elapsed, schools have the authority to shred the information. Auditors, program reviewers, and so forth can only go back in that particular time frame. And so you can get rid of that documentation. However, with I-9s, W-4, and so forth, there's a longer requirement under the Department of Labor IRS requirements, and it's typically about 7 to 8 years that a school is required to hold on to that documentation. So it usually, depending on who collects that information from an I-9 or employee payroll perspective, they're going to be the owners of it. But if it's housed in terms of financial aid, then you obviously have to look at your record retention component of it. And R2, T4, PJs, plus loan information, those are specific to financial aid. With PJs, I'll touch on that one. The Department of Education wants you to justify why you're making a particular change. And so if you are going to make adjustment for wages or child support or child care and so forth, you need to clearly document what you've done with that file and what is considered to be acceptable documentation. It's all going to go back to your policy procedures manual, because if that information is not clearly articulated, I did a compliance audit for a school about a month or so ago, and their PJs, when you talk to them, they're being done correctly, but the documentation was very sparse. And so that's a huge compliance issue because there's a weakness. If a program reviewer comes in, they're going to cite that school for not clearly identifying how they've done a PJ. Same thing with an R2T4 because there's a variety of different complex requirements that go in there. For example, making sure that you identify really what the last day of attendance is, and if you have a policy to identify that last day of attendance, what are you going to use to determine the date of determination? If you do collect attendance, that's going to be part of your policy, and that's what a reviewer is going to look at to make sure you have the right last day of attendance to calculate the withdrawal calculation and with the money sent back on time. And conversely, with R2T4, if the student has obtained all Fs, the department says that you can assume that the student has earned all those Fs. And then there are some policies where the schools will have different grades to say the student has earned an F versus they just dropped off the face of the earth. So depending on the school's policy will really dictate in terms of how you're going to identify, document, and track those students who have all Fs. So, depending on the form, the type of information you're doing, the process, the program, will really kind of dictate it. But in terms of financial aid, the R2T4, the PJs, and so forth, again, there is a specific time frame, and you only need to hold on to that documentation for that particular period of time. So I hope answers the question for that person. A question here from the work study component of it. The school is trying to monitor student earnings so they don't go over their allotment. And if you have Banner Financial Aid, you can do all of that inside Banner Financial Aid. There's tons of great reports that can be used. So if you enter the student's authorization on RJSEER, okay, and you manually, as payroll happens, you can use RJA-SCME to enter the work study earnings in each payroll cycle. If you do that, that'll update the paid column on the award screen, and you can use as an earnings control report that you can provide to each department that shows all the students in that department, how much they've been authorized to work, how much they've used, and how much they have left in their. You can just run this report by department or by supervisor and send it off to them. So you don't necessarily need an ADP or Kronos in order to do that if you have a software that allows you to do that. But I know if it's Banner, hopefully your Banner school, that can all be done inside the software without needing an add-on or any bells and whistles to be done. So any questions so far on the items that we've covered? And afraid, ask away. So I have a question. What is the earnings control report? The earnings control report is RJR DTPR, I believe. All right, and there's another one, RJR SEEC. If you're a Banner school, all right, you just do RJR% and the direct access, and it'll come up with all the student employee and student employment forms. Okay. Let's see. I want to make sure everyone is unmuted. I have a few people who are still muted, so let me unmute them. Everybody, I just unmuted everybody. I didn't realize we had more people who joined. So are there any questions for those people who have joined and as I've gone through?
Ray, yes, I have a question. This is Katrina. The question regarding setting up SSB to display the awards in certain order. If I understood you correctly, you were saying that we would need to set it up to where we could like put a number in front of the fund code?
Or if you come up with a mnemonic, so to speak, that way all your scholarships show up they start off with a certain character. That way you can order them that way, but that's really the only way. Numbers obviously work because in the way Banner's functionality, it does numeric values first, then alpha. Oh, so if you put a number in front of your scholarships, they would always show up first.
Okay, but we've already set up the fund codes. That would mess up a lot of other things.
Got it. Okay.
Gotcha.
So it's something to consider. I don't know if you do the any kind of paper notifications. The shopping sheet does, I think, a fairly good job of itemizing it for you and for the student. But without doing the paper version, it doesn't automatically redisplay them based on the print order on RFR base.
Gotcha. Okay, I just wanted to double check myself and make sure.
But yeah, that is a pain. I can certainly get that with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Any questions? All right, so go on. And I did not get a lot of questions, I'll say that. So if your question is not answered here, feel free to ask away, because again, I did get I'd say about 7 or 8 questions. So this is a good opportunity if you have anything that you want to kind of talk about. The very last one I'll do, I'm saving the best for last so far, is verification, because I'm sure we're all dying to start verifying files. So the next question here is, how do campuses embrace this thinking? We have a one-stop shop, but not all documents are processed here. We still send students to other places for resources. How can we truly become a one-stop? How can it be done? What are the cons? What customer service trainings now exist for employees in this area? And lenders did used to provide this kind of training and so forth. I don't know if, Rush, you want to take this one or myself? You've had a lot of experience. I actually just helped a school who just implemented the one-stop in January with student accounts and the registrar's office. So they did financial aid, student accounts, and registrar all in one location, and they got the senior administration to really support this change. Certainly, anytime you do a one-stop is not always easy, because you're bringing a variety of different functions and a lot of different personalities together. And there's always been this kind of animosity sometimes between financial aid and student accounts, even though we really do the same thing. So it depends on how the leadership really deals with this. But I can say it's been highly successful at the school that I was just at last week, in my former life up in New Hampshire when I was there, and it does make the students' life a tremendously better. They don't have to walk between offices. They don't have to get, this stuff, student accounts issue, go see student accounts and track, through the snow or, down the street to get the student accounts. To specifically the question, it can be done. It's not easy. The school I'm at right now, they've done the whole one-stop piece, but, they mentioned this week that it's difficult because they're in their infancy. There's not enough maturity at the school to embrace the full idea of a one-stop. And so it'll come as you get turnover, as you get more people who really re-energize that community. It's going to be dependent upon the leaders, whether that be the director of, the one-stop, whether that be, just the players involved, how well the staff, dealing with the change. Training's going to be key on there because if people know how to answer the questions, it's going to be not a fruitful experience for even the students because they're going to still go through the same stress that everybody else does. But the way we did it at this school was, each individual area own workup of what they thought everyone needed to be trained on. And then throughout a 4-month period before they went through the one-stop move, they met every other week and they talked about things that what everyone thought they needed to know. And there are things that need to be realized when you do a one-stop. There needs to be separation of duties. People who award financial aid can't disperse financial aid, and there are specific things that need to happen. So there needs to be clear guidelines what can be done, but there can also be a blurring of some abilities because you can still accept, help families figure out what the payment is. You're taking, a check and then you're going to give it to somebody else. So that person can truly have to go through that piece, go to a cashier, but you've already helped them figure out what the balance is. We do a lot in our own industry, so it depends on, how much the interaction you want these generalists to be. Then you have your specialists who will really focus on, verifications and so forth, but everyone still has a base foundation to do that. There are still a number of companies out there, HEAG is one of them, who help schools when they want to implement the one-stop, determine how we re-engineer the staff and help everyone understand what those roles are. And then even from the marketing aspect, how do you get students to buy into this whole new one-stop component? If you have it, that's I think a good step. But if you're not really utilizing this concept, it can be frustrating, and it sounds like you're experiencing that not all documents are processed here. I'm not sure what documents are not processing your one-stop, but for example, now all the information goes to one area, in this college, and then we have work study students who actually open mail, enter the information in, or scan it into the system, so that way the centralized repository for all these documents. Also, a lot of documents that we're trying to push off to a self-service component. So the school I was at last week, and I'll use them as an example because it's fresh in my mind, is that most of the documentation is all collected on their school-based software. So Title IV authorizations, which are probably a bane of many people's existence, are FERPA authorizations. We collect those electronically, and they sit in the school-based software, and that the form is shared by multiple offices within that one stop, so that way they all know how the information is collected. So depending on, can you push information out to the web and have the students really do that? Because part of this one-stop component was just not looking at combining office functions, but really a one-stop portal for students, so that way they can engage the college in a different format without having to get lost by going into financial aid or student accounts or the registrar. They really re-engineered how they utilize their software system. So I don't know if that answers the question for this one-stop component of it, but I can say that, this school had moved right after the new year. So we're going on just 2 months of a one-stop component, and the staff seems to be really enjoying the one-stop. They've noticed students' impressions of how they interact with the staff, and it seems to be moving in the right direction. They need to be committed and remain committed to that whole one-stop component, but for the most part, it seems to be transitioning well. And in my experience overall, I've seen community colleges, private schools, universities, much larger universities do these one-stop components, and students really like that, families like that, so that way they can figure out the bottom line for that, for their student to enroll there. And I think from an enrollment perspective, the higher level, if schools really do this, they can probably see a turnaround in terms of how their enrollment will increase and so forth. So that answered the question for you, but that's a good question. So the last question I got, and again, this is just, we can certainly add more add questions if you have them, but the new verification rules. So has anyone seen on FinAidL that recent post where the Department of Education is only going to have the verification status code on the initial FAFSA, and then on the subsequent ICERs, they're not going to continue the verification status through subsequent ICERs? Has anyone heard that? And I'm more than happy to send you the FinAidL stuff because I was blown away. What that meant to me in terms of the verification components is the way I initially designed and thought about doing verification, that we'd have individual verification groups for each different status. And as the students may move from a V1 to a V5 or whatever it might have been, we can control exactly how those documents are going to be applied to a student's account. This new, and I haven't been able to get it validated by anyone at the department, but it does present some unique challenges because, as you know, we get multiple FAFSAs throughout the semester, and then now with the level of eligibility, we continue to get new FAFSAs every time that percentage of Pell eligibility changes. So, if they're not going to continue that verification status through the other FAFSAs, we need to re-engineer and rethink about how we're going to capture the correct verification status. But for the most part, I'm not sure. This is a very basic question. Was there more detail about this particular question that someone was curious about? Feel free to ask away. There's all questions are good here.
You'll get an answer. Can you send it out to everyone?
Yes, I will.
Okay. That's
so, I'm not sure. I just, like I said, the school I did has around 2,300 FAFSAs. It's a small school. It's about 4,000 students. But their first year class, they had 2,300 FAFSAs. When I looked at the breakdown of who was selected in V2, V3, V4, and V5, the numbers are really small. And I'm not sure if everyone's noticing that. Is that pretty consistent across your populations, or are you seeing a good number of students falling into those unique selections now? Is anyone seeing more of the V2, V3, V4, V5s? All that thing. I guess we're all kind of experiencing the right amount of ID selections. But I can say there are a lot more students who are being selected in the V1. The number of students I saw who are being selected is a lot larger than they had been in the past. So the algorithms that the department are using to exclude people from the V2 through V5 have made it much more rigorous, it appears, for the V1. So you could see a lot more students being elected, so to speak. In terms of the verification rules, too, are there other schools who are going one step beyond this? And, for example, I have a school here who's really kind of helped automate and track their conflicting information, but they went one step beyond that because they wanted to really pay attention to how much institutional aid they were going to give a student, especially those students who have negative AGIs. And while it's allowable and they may not be selected for verification, what this school has done is that if you have an AGI that's over, I think it's, $20,000, a negative AGI over $20,000, they're automatically excluding that student from the campus-based aid, and then making the student appeal to them because obviously they have a negative operating loss from a business that for FAFSA purposes, they're allowable. So I'm not sure if other schools have seen that, but that is correct. And I did get a comment here as well that yeah, I was at the FSA conference as well, and they were saying that there would be very few V4 and V5. I will say, when I look at the numbers, there are more of V5s than there are 2, 3, and 4. So that was kind of surprising that they're going to have these schools do that. I'm not sure if anyone's come across any of the new C flags for unusual enrollment pattern. So far, I have not seen any, and I have about 8 schools that I work with, and I have yet to see anyone that has an unusual enrollment pattern C flag yet. So this is the last question I got. I'll go over, our next HEL webinar we're going to have is going to be on the federal shopping sheet in regards to schools who want to early implement it. I've implemented it now at 4 different schools, and the implementation was easy, and it gave the schools a whole year in advance to go through that in light of the department wanting to really probably make this regulation for next year. So, and students are able to download this from their self-service portals, and saving the school a tremendous amount of time and the headache of having to put these all together. So that's going to be Friday, April 12th at 2 p.m. Are any other questions that you have that you're coming across now that you'd like to talk about? You'd like to ask questions for either me or Russ? And if there are other things that we didn't address on here that you would like to send us emails, personally, you can certainly feel free to email myself or Russ. Our emails are attached to this. I will send out the PowerPoint to everybody with the URL for the session if you'd like to share it with others. And from what I'm seeing, things seem to be going fairly smooth this year with the exception of the headache of new verification requirements. So any questions? I'm glad to say today was a quick PowerPoint presentation. I thank you all for your time and your questions that you submitted to us. I look forward to anyone who wants to attend that shopping sheet one in April. And everyone have a great weekend. Thank you all.